Hi, I just thought I would share with you the start of my sketchbook journey through Portugal and Spain. This was the 3 months at the start of our trip. We're currently in Cornwall, on the Cornwall coast of the UK, in Falmouth, with this beautiful setting, and I'm painting locally here now, but I'll share that later in a separate video. So here's Portugal and Spain. So here is the start of our trip in Portugal. This idea is a little bit of a walking map. So it was a walking tour, and I've done a little insight from each of the places we visited and stopped at. Something as simple as, you know, just a sign that caught my eye is what I remember. Street signs, they can be such simple things that you notice and remember. This day was all about pina coladas. Something I've learned along the way is to rule a vertical line so that my text doesn't wander across the page like that. I also have the intention to do some interiors that work on my perspective, so there's a few of those through the sketchbook. And I'm trying to work on different layouts of the page, so elements that cross over and tuck behind each other. Lots of flowers, and with the flowers I'm generally not drawing anything, just painting straight in with a brush and paint. Occasionally we've had these fantastic placemats in restaurants, so I have glued a few of those in, so if you see something really like that, that's not a sketch or a painting I've done. It's a little placemat from the restaurant. This, we're in Lisbon at this stage, a very well-known monument, and we were sitting while having our little duck croquettes and Aperol spritz, looking at this monument from the rooftop bar. I loved the Banksy exhibition, and I wasn't very familiar with his work at all beforehand, but afterwards I wanted to paint something in the style of 3 tones of black, because he generally was stenciling, and when you look closely a lot of them just had 3 tones of greys to black. And so my political commentary in the style of Banksy was about how you see in so many historical and incredible touristic places, people rush in, turn their back to it, take a photo of themselves, then spend their time looking at their phone to make sure they're happy with their photo, and then they dash off, and they haven't really stopped and looked and enjoyed the place. So this lady sitting on the curb in front of the monastery San Geronimo in Lisbon, and she's on her phone, which of course lots of times we're looking at maps and things, so we can genuinely need to be on our phones or catching up with family. A couple more interiors of a fantastic bar that we visited. I just love the colours, and this was such a what's the word for if it's super difficult? The staircase was really tricky for me, but I enjoyed tackling it and trying to get it right, or at least suggesting that it was a staircase with banisters. Now we've arrived in Albufeira on the coast of Portugal, and so some of these are painted on side and some aren't. So this was one that I did sitting just in a outdoor cafe close by that hadn't opened yet, doing a wall of a hotel, a wall of another bar. And then later, because they were so accommodating to let me stay there after they were setting up, I went inside and I painted while I waited for my sardines to come. Sardines are a really big dish in Portugal. And sometimes in the deciding factor about whether to add text or not, this page felt quite disjointed. It just kind of wasn't really working, and once I added the text I felt like it worked a little bit better. The rock faces at Albufeira and the caves really captured my attention, and the colours, the beautiful warm and cool passages in the shadows. I was so excited to see prickly pears, so every time I saw them I was photographing them and wanting to paint them. They were right at the end of their flower season though, so there weren't very many still flowering. I struggled this trip because I don't have lemon yellow in my palette. I've had to buy one, but at this point my yellows were a little bit duller than what I would have liked for them to look. This area, I can't say the name of the town, is just a massive bougainvillea and fancy doorways. I should say they're not fancy, they're decorative or coloured doorways. So they really captured my attention. Lots of bicycles decorative in the street. This had flowers all woven through the spikes. We then also did a boat trip that included a couple of the islands from, I can't say it. So this is another exploration in page layouts to try and just capture a few different things from that day trip. So still we're in Albufeira. We stayed there for a month. This day I'd taken my sketchbook with me and we were sitting having a bite to eat, and I hadn't decided what view I was painting, and I picked up my glass and my sangria dropped off the stem, so I decided that that would be my painting. So I had started on the sangria in the jug, and then our charcuterie platter came, so it was added to my sketch. And I've got this little printer called a sprocket that I carry with me. So these are little stickers. When you see that very square shape, that's generally one of the sprocket photos. So this is a little painting after a day trip to the Benagil Caves or Benagil Caves on the coast, on the Algarve coast. So I did a tonal study with a blue mechanical pencil that I've got, and then a painting on the other side. I was channeling a friend called Naomi, whose Instagram profile is Charcoal Pony, who often has a small thumbnail tonal sketch on the left side of her page, and I love the look. I hadn't decided at that stage whether I was going to do a coloured painting or not. My daughters couldn't believe I posted photos to Facebook that had my gnarly toes still in them, so I decided my gnarly toes needed to be in my sketchbook as well. And a very bad interior there. Sketching on the beach. All of these little people sort of start and stop because, you know, I got to this point thinking that this lady was quite static and reading a book, then she moved, so I started somebody else who was sitting with her phone, then she stood up and went and swam, so then I started. So these people are all separate obviously, but the drawings are linked. And then I was just picking up different people, and you know, I had the plan at this stage to add her figure, and then she moved. This is the same lady as this one, and this might also be the same girl as here, and she's come back to a different position. The two ladies leaning on the rock wall. So here we've arrived in Seville, and again this is a mechanical pencil, just with a red lead, and I quite like it. This was a real challenge for me perspective wise, so I got to that stage and I thought, you know, I quite like that. I'm just going to leave it as is, keep it simple, even though it's not simple, but not add paint to it. I've been quite taken with the shop fronts, and this was a pen shop that I chatted with them about some fountain pens that were playing up, and they sold me a good cleaner that actually worked and resolved my problems. So again, another one, just keeping it simple, not adding paint. I think a sienna, urban sienna ink in a fountain pen for that one, of the Plaza de España. I joined in with the Urban Sketches Sevilla, or Sevilla, one evening at a bar. This is the name of the bar. And so I was sketching really quickly because inside there was a flamenco show, and I had thought I'd dash in and catch it, but then I wanted to just stay and keep sketching. So I missed the show and came back another night, and so these were a couple of other sketches, just a window that had little panes. There were lots of plants and hanging baskets and pots. Really interesting stuff at this cafe outdoor courtyard. Then we went to a flamenco show, so these were obviously done afterwards from photos. My lady is a little bit too short there. I ran out of room, but I decided I would fit her. I would still finish that and live with the fact that she's a little bit short. Here I was just really trying to capture the light. So that was really all just about light and shadow. the canna lilies were absolutely stunning in Sevilla. And so again, these were painted at first with no pencil, no drawing. There was a little video posted of partial, but I realized my hand was blocking a lot of it, so I didn't post the whole video. And then you can see there is some color pencil there, so I've added the color pencil afterwards. Sometimes I feel like it just needs a little touch more definition, so the colored pencil, and if I put it in later after I've painted, I'm looser with it, so I quite like that. But when I was doing this, I had this painting and that painting, and they just felt too separate, and so this little sketch hopefully linked the two drawings together. So another walking tour, musicians. We'd gotten these cookies from a nun's convent, where the nuns have no outside contact with people. They don't leave the convent, and you buy the cookies that they make so that they're self-supporting by putting your money in a rotating cupboard, and then they roll it around and your cookies are there in a bag. So just little things that will remind me of that day, the signs on the houses. This was sitting in a cafe waiting for our food to arrive, and there was a beautiful, I think that's called an Astramera, on the table. This man was sitting just near me selling balloons, and the face of this balloon kept popping around in my direction, so I thought that was perfect. I had a gap over here, so I started to draw some people, but of course they kept moving. So, you know, he doesn't have an arm. This lady moved about 6 times position, so I was guessing a lot. Again, this is a placemat, and it had the story of the cafe. So I've torn that up and added that to my page. We did a day trip to the Sierra Nevada mountains, and so these were 3 studies that I did, and popped the video of these 2 up on YouTube. So it's there if you're interested. Just another one of the red pencil, the red mechanical pencil. And this was an etching that I purchased in Sevilla. And I meant to leave a page for it back after this. It was meant to go there and I forgot. So I've added that near the end. And this was just a yellow ink in a brush pen, and I was testing out, again, not drawing anything, just going straight in with the brush pen to see what kind of texture and line quality that would give me. And some things I've bought some extra color paints and some markers along the way, so this is just me testing the color. And then I've started the second sketchbook of this trip, and here we're in Granada, so at the Alhambra. So just a couple of sketches from the day of the Alhambra. These gum trees were really amazing, but they had these big knots and the pigeons were nesting in the knots. So that had caught my eye, along with these little sparrows. I've been quite taken with the sparrows over here. And I had a photo from my last trip in France, nearly the same, 3 little sparrows on Banksia Rose. And I captured this photo at the Alhambra as well, multiple photos with the sparrows on the Banksia. So I've done a little sketch of that with the intention to do a pattern design with it. Then we did a weekend over at Nerja, and so the busy beach scene, looking through an arch. The pathways and roadways had stones making patterns in the roads, so that's what I was trying to capture here, but I didn't do it very well. Always love these kind of lifeguard towers. Not sure what the lifeguard would be needed there for, because there's no waves and the water is flat as flat. We did another kayaking trip, and the emerald water was just amazing. So in this one I was really just trying to capture that colour of the water, just playing with that a little bit. And just randomly we ended up in Malaga just for one night, and there was a week-long fair on, which I had already posted about, so you might have seen that. And just all of the ladies in their flamenco dresses, and the musicians were amazing. So I've tried to capture more the conversations between them, the colours, and just the mood and the feeling of the day in that one. Then we did a a river trip, but walking and swimming up the river, climbing up the waterfalls, over the waterfalls, jumping off them. Such a fantastic day. We were lucky it was just John and I and the guide, and again the emerald water and the reflection and the beautiful rocks captured my imagination, and I think I'm going to do an exhibition of works from that series of photos. Just luckily, I met up with a lady, just randomly, sorry, I met up with a lady in the Doha airport on my way over who is Spanish, living in Australia. She was spending 3 months in Madrid. So her last days in Madrid were the same as our last days in Madrid. So we went and sketched at the Sorolla Museum together. And don't you hate when you make a spelling mistake in a heading? So I've just put a line through it. I could have just left it, but you know, felt uncomfortable that I'd spelled his name wrongly. So we sketched on site. So I had drawn this drawing in and I painted it later, and then drew these two as well, standing in the what is his studio space. If you're familiar with Sorolla's work, it's just beautiful. And then we sketched down in the garden, and I started to paint this, and then it was closing time, so I finished that afterwards. And I've just added the like a little catalogue brochure that was in the gallery that I took with me. And that's the end of the Spain and Portugal portion of our trip. And now I've started on Cornwall and the Cornwall coast, so I will save that for another video.